Hello, everybody, and welcome to the L&D Leadership League Twangout on making L&D drive strategic initiatives. A People Matters initiative in association with Center of Creative Leadership, Nolscape, Pearson Talent Lens, and Great Lakes Institute of Management. Thank you once again for joining us. I'm Savita from People Matters, and I will run you through a little about the league, and then we'll move straight into the session. So this is the second edition to the L&D Leadership League that we have. We will bring before you different set of activities that will give us an opportunity to ensure that each of us learns, shares, and grows. Do visit our website, lndleague.peoplematters.in, and make sure you do not miss out on any part of this league at all. With this, I'd like to introduce you to our host for today's Twangout. We have Shivan Tikku, OD Manager at Mahindra & Mahindra Auto and Farm Equipment Sectors. Shivan works on HR strategies, organizational development, and employer branding functions. He has also been the winner of the Young Are You on the List HR Awards 2013. Welcome, Shivan. It's a pleasure to have you.
Hi, thanks, Savita.
Our guest for today's L&D Leadership League Twangout, one who actually does not require much of introduction, but he writes very regularly at various forums. His writings have appeared in the Wall Street Journal, Operations Research, and Management Sciences Today. Join me in welcoming Abhijit Bhaduri, Chief Learning Officer of the Wipro Group. Prior to Wipro, he has led HR teams at Microsoft, PepsiCo, Colgate, and Tata Steel, and worked in India, Southeast Asia, and the US. Abhijit is the author of 2 best-selling works of fiction, most recently a book on how to hire for the culture and role fit, and it's called Do Not Hire the Best. Welcome, Abhijit. It's a pleasure to have you as a speaker for today's Twangout session.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Before I request Shivan to take over from here, and I would request and remind all of you to follow the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag #LNDLeague. Please share your comments and post your questions so Shivan can take them up for Abhijit through the session live. For those who are not on Twitter yet, you can inbox me your questions at savita.vijayan@peoplematters.in, while we encourage all of you to, of course, join on Twitter and join the conversation. We have exciting giveaways for all of you today. 1 year of print plus digital subscription of People Matters for the most active Twitter listener. So without being between you and Abhijit, I request Shivan to take over from here. It's super exciting. And absolutely excited to start this session. Over to you, Shivan.
Okay. Hi. I would like to start with a quote from PLC Executive Board, which says, only 23% of our line leaders report satisfaction with the overall effectiveness of the L&D function. So clearly, L&D function is at crossroads today. While we might be devising excellent educational programs, but is it serving the business needs is a question that we need to ask ourselves. And I have the privilege and the pleasure to host Mr. Abhijit Bhaduri. So Abhijit, would you like to start with your broad level views on this subject?
Yeah, thanks, Shivan. Thank you, Savita. I think the main question to really answer is when people say, what is the business alignment? What really do people mean when they say business alignment, and L&D has to really work with that? And the answer to that is that it really must equip people with skills which they can translate back into the job. And once they translate that back into the job, it must result in some kind of a visible impact, which is different from what it was before the person went in for that developmental exposure. So really, when people are talking about making a difference in alignment and all the terms that we see, the measurement of ROI, all of that basically refers to what is it that changes because of their experiences compared to what it was before. So if you are clear on how to do that, then I think you tend to get very sharp focused. Otherwise, the older model has been, it is an input model, which is that if you have a training program, so I create a program on decision making, and then I invite people to join in, and those open programs are becoming more and more obsolete. So it is really around very customized. It's a need. This is the problem. This is what we are trying to solve, and this is how you want to solve it. So it is really that shift.
Abhijit, I would start with the first question for the day. Is that how can learning and development be a part of a CEO's agenda? As a HR head, how can we create a business case for the same?
I think there was a time when, when you look at the way businesses were, there were long stretches which were extremely high growth stretches. And in those cases, really, the notion of talent was that you needed people who could actually deliver something. You needed people who could be proactive in working with the customers. Today, when you see that the world is going to see really slower growth overall, and then growth is really going to be, growth opportunities are going to be like flash mobs. So they are going to appear somewhere, they're going to be there for a very short while, and once it's there for that short while, you make the most of it. And therefore, it's going to require not generalists, but people with deep specialist skills. So therefore, the role of business success really is going to depend very heavily on the skills that people bring to the table. And because those time windows of business are going to be very short, it means that it is not enough to hire someone who has the skills, but no matter who you hire, you will have to invest in reskilling. And the question really is that earlier, when development used to be, what it meant was when you send people on a development kind of an exposure, you send them either for a 2-day workshop or you send them for a little project for a couple of days. And that model is going to need to get supplemented for the rest of the year, because you will need people who are continuously learning on their own. Because if the window of opportunity is short, the opportunity to use your skills is going to be very short as well. Which means it doesn't matter what you've learned, you'll have to keep preparing yourself for your next gig at any given point of time. So the onus has shifted from the employer really onto the employee. So that's the changed landscape.
So I think my takeaway for this would be that no matter whom you hire, you need to develop their skills, and the ownership is not just on manager or the employer, it's on the employee himself. This brings me to the second question. What are the certain best practices, Abhijit, that you have seen in this field, and what can be the first step that as an HR head I can initiate?
When you talk about best practices, at Wipro, what we are really trying to do is to focus our development effort, increasingly looking at sort of increasing the proportion and percentage of, number one, we are trying to say that, it's not enough what you do in the classroom, what do you do outside of the classroom. So that is really the first step, which is actually changing. The second thing that we are doing differently is actually to say that how do we make sure that there are, besides the open programs, which as a percentage is actually dropping, and it's more and more of customized programs, which is spread over very, very long stretches of time. So, we continue to do short programs, which is, 2 days, 3 days, 10 days, 3 weeks. We will do all of that. But then there is an increasing proportion of programs which are, spread over a year or 2 years. So I'm currently, for example, personally leading something which is a 2-year, engagement with one of our business units. And so the nature of how long we get involved in the kind of problems that we are in, this is really, for example, the one I'm working on involves looking at changing the growth percentage of a certain business of ours. So how do you do things like that, which is really, and the moment you do that, it takes away all those questions which we have traditionally grappled with. What's the ROI of this training program? I mean, the ROI is very straightforward. You are either getting that growth or you are not getting that growth. So those kind of changes are really done. The way we are doing those changes, we are doing those changes by looking at 3 basic drivers. One is looking at leveraging social technology, social media. And by that, one is looking at, there is already, for example, on Facebook, if you see, there is a CHRD page which has not only people from Wipro, the L&D function, but it has several users all over, and they're not necessarily L&D professionals either. It's all of them. And to create communities and really, which brings us to the second piece. How do you leverage technology, whether it's apps, whether it is, mobile, how do you leverage that? And the third is, how do you create communities which sustain the learning either before and after. So in every sense, you are creating an ongoing continuous learning culture on the basis of technology, technology, social, and community.
So it's interesting that you mentioned that how the trend is moving from open to customized programs, how you're looking at meeting your growth plans, and the entire aspect of communities and the platforms, which we would be shortly touching upon. I wanted to understand with you as in terms of your L&D strategy, how do you look at it, how do you approach it, and how do you know that it's aligned to your business strategy as a HR head or as a learning head? What are some of the matrices or parameters that I need to consider to align L&D strategy to your business strategy?
So, if you look at the whole notion of when we are crafting out the L&D strategy, we look at, again, looking at three questions. Where is business going to be in the next 18 to 24 months? What kind of skills do we need, which is different from what we've had before? And it's going to get a lot more granular, and therefore looking at what is the best way to make sure that those skills are passed on to the group of people. So if you look at skills, it's really getting a lot more specific. We would, for example, say that if we are going to say that, one certain kind of it's not good enough to just say analytics is going to drive business, but you have to say in retail, video analytics is going to become more important than, let's say, in another particular sector. Or you might say in healthcare, it is analytics that's going to come out of devices, which is going to become a lot more important. And in which case, what is the kind of skill that's going to require? Which is different from what the person has or what the person has done before. So that's really the kind of shift that you're talking about.
Which moves me to the next segment, Abhijit, is sustainability post-training. Now, all of us conduct training programs, learning and development initiatives, but how important is the follow-up sessions post that learning activity, and how do we ensure that it is sustained from an employee point of view?
Yeah, I think, if you look at, the way we've learned as we were growing up, I mean, the whole model was, it was not that, you were told from A to Z, here are the 26 alphabets, we've taught you, you attended school one day and then you're done. There's repetition, there is a community, you learn, you are given assignments, somebody helps you recall, then you apply that, you create word games out of that. So the whole notion of repeatability is a very important aspect of picking up a new skill. And therefore, when you look at, if you look at learning purely as an event, that, you attend a class and then see you, next time after 2 years, that model actually doesn't help you pick up skills. So really, and especially if these are skills which are new skills, it does require a certain amount of sustenance, which is why, the ability to leverage not just one particular facilitator, but, to leverage resources right across, whether it's in the organization or outside, which is what actually social media lets you do so beautifully. On Twitter, for example, now that we are using something like this, People Matters gets somebody from Wipro, you have Shivan from Mahindra, and then you have a bunch of people from organizations all over, and we are sharing ideas around this. So I think that the model of learning is really going to be around multiple media, multiple moments, multiple occasions, multiple people. But each one of them is probably going to be a very short piece. So we are not running this Twangout for like 3 days in a row. We are running it for an hour. It's very focused. It's on a particular theme. You get your responses and try and apply that.
Yeah. we we have a question pasted from our online forums which says, is L&D merely a tick on the CEO's PRA list? So is it just the tick mark exercise or not? In your experience, what has been? Are CEOs serious about learning and development? And the second related to it is, how can HR make a dynamic shift from this?
I think it sort of really depends, when it comes to any of these questions, there is a lot which depends on an individual. But today, I think it's very hard for any CEO to succeed if they don't have the right skills. I mean, you can get the business, but how do you deliver the business that you got? It doesn't matter what it is. If you're running a magazine, you can create a magazine, you can have somebody to publish it, but you don't have people to write it, then what are you going to do? If it's a specialist magazine, you have to have people who can write about the specialist matter. So in no area, it doesn't matter what it is. You don't go to a restaurant where there is a lack of skill. You can't advertise something as a Mediterranean restaurant and don't have someone who doesn't know the dishes. So it doesn't matter, whichever way that you cut the pie, you will need people as a very integral part of the business strategy. So therefore, L&D is not a bolt-on. Earlier it would, life would continue, and then people would step out of their life and come into a classroom for some open program, and people would say, oh, there's a program happening in a very nice destination. Oh, it's happening in Goa. I'm going to go there. Today, it is really not around that whole piece. That doesn't mean that you can't have a nice destination. However, the focus is not on the destination. It's on how will you do what is required to make the business succeed. So really, the need how the business actually uses this has changed a lot.
Uh, we have a question from one of our Twitter posts, which from Baswati. The Twitter handle is @BHASWATIP. And her question to you, Abhijit, is, how do you do a strategic impact analysis of the past training and share it with the managers? So how do you do a strategic impact analysis of your training?
So, hey, Baswati, thanks for that question. Quick response is that, I think that's another mindset change that we'll need to do. And I'm not saying that our company is already there as yet, but think about it. If the thing is, really successful, it is not you, but the business who should be talking about it. If you've really played that large a role in that transformation process, people will talk about it, and they will invite you for the next piece. Any service is actually gauged by the repeat business that you have and the share of mind that you have. So the answer to that question is that, when you are measuring, really ask the business, do they really see that you played that large a role, or are they acknowledging, that, okay, you were one of the extra characters in that film, or were you one of the lead players? So the idea is, progressively to move from being, one of the cameo actors into, really playing a very significant lead role in the transformation of that business. And we will be able to do it only once the L&D group has a very strong understanding of the issues that the business has and what are the drivers of that business. And therefore, really, most effective L&D people need to be able to answer three questions, which is that, how does this business make money? Because then you know what are the drivers of that finance. You need to understand that. Second thing is, how do we sell what we make? And the third piece is that once we sell it, how do we deliver it? So, finance, sales, and delivery, if you understand that, then automatically what you create is very much aligned to the business. It impacts the business. And you don't need to take a separate, feedback form and say, do you think you like the program? Because the only way you will be able to do it is not through a program, but you will be able to do it when you actually move it on a daily basis. You are, looking at long-term engagements, and you're looking at it and being an integral part of that. So it's really like, to give you an example, this is like saying that you are moving away from really an annual visit to a medical practitioner, your annual visit to a doctor. Instead of that, to actually work with a health coach who's actually working with you on a daily basis so that you don't need to fall sick. So it is that shift I'm talking about. Thank you.
Thanks, Abhijit. I think I really like the point of Wayne broke that when you said you need to understand the value drivers for your business. Uh, Moving to a similar theme, how do we look at the long-term horizon and rather than coming up with short-term fixed solutions or the flavor of season offerings? So how do we move to a really long-term approach when it comes to your learning and development?
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're looking at long-term development, it is really around, uh, yes, sorry, yeah. Okay, so when you're looking at long-term development, I think, the piece to keep in mind is, really trying to, training always works which is from your point of view, your own point of view, that here is a training program I've developed. I have, gone through all the cases. I've created something which I think is useful. Whereas when you're looking at a long-term, process and engagement, you're not looking at it as based on what I have created, but to really say, what is it that you need? It is, think about it as a difference between saying, hey, listen, here is a song that I have learned, I'm going to sing this song. As compared to that, imagine a singer who goes to a concert and says, what song of mine do you like to listen to, or what song are you in a mood to listen to? And the person is able to sing that. So it's really being able to understand from the user's perspective. And more often than not asking the user to pick. I mean, traditional training and development, what they do is you got a menu of programs. So you really take it really like a restaurant menu card, and you say, okay, so I can do communications, team building, decision making, problem solving, and the person really picks the one which appeals. They say, and more often than not, you'll come across things like communication. Let's do some communication training. Why are we doing it? What, that is unimportant. Why are we doing it? Which kind of scenario? Why did you think communication? Why not something else? Was it some? All that is lost. So, the moment you create predetermined boxes, people are going to choose between predetermined boxes. Imagine you go to a hospital and they say, you can choose between a dentistry department and a cardiology department. Which one do you want? You don't go like that. You want someone who can respond to what I need. I have a problem. First, find out what I have, and then tell me which department. And maybe two departments of yours need to work together. That's fine. But don't just tell me, that you've already got something which you need to give it to me.
Abhijit, we have a question from Gautam. The Twitter handle is @Gautam Ghosh, and he's asking how to help transform line managers into performance coaches, and in order to help employee performances and relearn. So, how do you convert your line managers into performance coaches?
That's actually, I, it's at one level, Gautam. Thank you very much for that question. I think at one stage it's a simple question, and I think on the other hand it's a fairly complex question, because there is coaching and mentoring and all of that. I mean, actually requires two elements. There is a will aspect to it, and there is a skill aspect to it. Which means one is that I should be willing to do this, and I must have the skill to do it. So both elements are important. So sometimes things don't take off in an organization because, I don't have the skill, which is actually an easier problem to fix, because I don't know how to coach, and then somebody could actually teach me, ask these kind of questions, demonstrate the right way to do it. So all those things are teachable. That stuff is learnable. I think the issue also comes up because, coaching and mentoring and facilitating and all is actually, there is a large element of will that is required. So you should be willing to, change what you have to offer. You have to be willing to listen. You have to be vested in the person's success. And above all, you must know the technology behind how to do this, which fundamentally means that, think about it in school and college. Every person, so we've had, a situation in my college when we had a professor who was the gold medalist from, one of the most prestigious colleges in the world, and who was actually a really terrible teacher. So now you would say that here is a person who really knows the subject better than anybody else. Why can't this person teach it? Because, there is a difference between transferring content and teaching, and making sure that so it's not just transfer of information, it's also about engaging me, it's also about motivating me, it's also about leaving that lasting impression which makes me want to go back and learn and further my knowledge. It makes me engaged in that whole process. So it's a fairly tall ask. It's not just about, then in which case we should just mail our slides and people should be done. So I think this whole shift of engaging line managers to do this involves finding out who are the people who have the will. If those people are there, the skill part of it is much easier to handle.
Um, a question which is slightly similar on what you spoke, Abhijit, and this is by the adventurist. The Twitter tag is at the rate XISP in chaos. And what he's asking is, if the onus of training or learning is on the employee, how do the how do they know what is hot and what is not at a particular time? So, how about
Uh,
any views on that? Yeah.
I think that that's a fantastic question. Exist in chaos. That's your Twitter handle, and that's exactly I think the answer to the question as well, which is that there is learning earlier used to be visualized. The whole concept of learning and knowledge. Earlier, it was really like a pond. It was static, or like a swimming pool, if you will. It was static. There was a finite amount. There was a defined boundary. It was a neat rectangle, and you sort of swam in that. You know exactly how much time it takes, and you can sort of crisscross that entire thing. It's suddenly, in a matter of few years, it moved from being, a swimming pool. It's moved to being really, a brook which was running and constantly alive. And to now, I sometimes think that it's more prudent to describe this whole shift to say that now it's really like an ocean, because it's sort of very hard to say where it begins and ends. It's interconnected to many disciplines, and it's also like really deep, and there's constant turmoil. So because of that, employees will have to get comfortable with the idea of really being comfortable with the idea of really reskilling themselves constantly. So, for instance, about 10 days back, Apple released a new program, in which the apps now have to be written, and this is Swift. As you know, that Apple released this new programming language. Now, who's going to actually teach people this programming language? Because there is no college which is offering that degree. There is certainly no institute which is offering a certificate course. Apple has released a little, document which is the basis, and people will need to try out different things. They will need to try out. They'll have to reprogram. Some things will become easier. Some will be tougher. As you are sort of really trying to do this, some people will pick up those skills faster. They'll probably release a YouTube video. Some will, create a Twangout like this. And those are the kind of ways in which people will need to learn. Some will post it on WhatsApp. So there are different things. I mean, for instance, somebody in the CHRD group sometime back, posted a white paper that they had done on experiments with gamification in technical training. I thought it was a lovely paper. It was so nicely documenting the person's actual experience. So I thought those are the ways in which people are going to learn. It's not necessarily, so if you're going to wait for a certification to learn Swift, by the time people start to teach it, it's probably going to be too old. So I think it's going to be about really learning in that chaos. It's about learning to swim in the ocean rather than learning to swim in the swimming pool, which is much safer. You have a baby pool, you have an adult pool, and you sort of, graduate. It's going to be less of that. It's more chaotic, and you need to be more adventurous in order to really make use of the opportunities. So thank you. Thanks, exist in chaos. That's the answer.
Thanks, Abhijit. The next one is from Elora. The Twitter handle is e_panda. And her question to you is, why coaching has not been very successful as capability development initiative in most organizations? And what could organizations do to make it more strategic?
All right. Hey, Elora, good to have you join us. Thank you so much. I think there are two particular elements to it. Coaching from the point of view of the coachee, so let's imagine that in all my enthusiasm, I go and sign up, I get certified as a coach, and then I'm ready to start my practice. So visualize yourself like a, freshly minted doctor from college. You have set up shop. You are there with your, white coat and stetho, and there's no patient. So how does a doctor really do that? So most people actually what they do is they will need to make sure that your expertise is known to people. And one of the ways today, people, I would say that even as you're going through that certification, you're doing all of that, start contributing knowledge, help others succeed. So today, really for the novice, the biggest advantage is that you have access to forums on social media. So, for example, I talked about the CHRD page. There is no barrier. You can go and if you've written an article, go and publish that there. Invite people to comment on that. And as you are doing that, already there's a brand built up. Brand you is already noted for, okay, here is a person who's really thinking about many issues of coaching. And therefore, Elora, it is much easier for people when you start, when you start your clinic, there are people who already know about you and they are going to sort of come in to talk to you and leverage your skills. The second piece is a little more complex, and I think it's got to do with the fact that the classical model of coaching actually does not encourage asking questions. I mean, it relies on asking questions, not providing answers. And yet, many of us, in terms of, and I see this probably more in the eastern part of the world than in the western part of the world, where you traditionally go to an expert or an elder or or a person with a question. You are really looking for an answer. So you say, I'm having this problem at work. What do you think I should do about it? When the coach comes back and says, what do you think led to this problem? Now I'm saying that, and I've heard many people say that. They will say, hey, listen, I went with a question. What this coach did is ask me 5 more questions and then said, well, okay, so since you have the answer, implemented. So why did I go to the coach? So expectation of that role is that there is an expert. It's really like, people are expecting a Google. They are not expecting a coach. So it's really like saying, okay, what's the length of the river Nile? I want to put in that in Google and I want to respond. So people are looking at quick fixes. Coaching is not meant for that. So maybe more and more people should be looking for mentors, not coaches. And 2, coaching also, it has to do with credibility of the coach. So if I've known you to be a person who has handled that particular question in real life, and now after the certification, you just have a better skill, so it's really, you've always been passionate about teaching. And now that you've done a certification in instructional design, I mean, I think now you're really good at it. So that's different from the fact that, okay, you said, I'm ready to facilitate. Okay, who is going to come to you? So you have to build your brand. And 2, I think the model of coaching also needs to be re-examined.
The next question, Abhijit, is from Meher, and her Twitter handle is @Lega Meher. Uh, the question is with respect to the outside world. So, shouldn't there be stronger ties between the L&D department within the company and the colleges that they hire from?
I don't know. I mean, I have I kind of have a slightly sort of, I would say, I don't know, maybe a little controversial view. I think L&D is something that historically, if you sort of look at a lot of training, I used to get a lot of resumes from people who would say, I'm very tired. I've done whatever sales or delivery for years now. I've done it for 10 years. I was really seriously looking for a more relaxed life. I don't want to travel that much. Can I come into trading? So I used to get a lot of that for many, many years. Actually, until and unless people understand that here is that specialist skill, it's a deep specialization. And sometimes in a institutional context, people can read the theory and all of that, but I think development and learning today requires skills which are probably not taught in most of the schools. So therefore, for many people to come in straight from college into this requires a far longer, learning curve, and that is why I think a lot of L&D people are reluctant to go to a campus and hire. That's my point of view. That doesn't mean that it's the right point of view, but that's my point of view. So let me give you a couple of different examples. I think the ability for the L&D people to really be extremely skilled in technology and media is very, 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 very high. And I don't think there is a single B school, at least none that I'm aware of, which gives people deep skills in this entire process. How do you integrate social media, technology, and communities in the learning process? So it is done as a bolt-on. So I can have a few people who tweet, but that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for people who can integrate the social process into the learning system altogether. So therefore, the kind of skills that are really required, I think a lot of people are still training themselves for the old trainer model, where somebody would give you 25 slides on a topic, and then you just sort of, you understood the script. It was like performing in a play. So you kind of, narrated it, and you got better and better as you remembered your lines better and better. And then you got great feedback because people were impressed with your delivery, and then, you went home. Today, people are really seeking to solve a business problem. It's far more long drawn, and therefore the ability to do a one-off for 1 day or 2 days to impress the hell out of you is really not the way the L&D function works. But I'm not sure I've seen a lot of colleges and B schools shift their curriculum to provide those skills. I think that's really where the gap is. So should they be involved in this? Yes. I mean, I would love to see a college talk about, so I'm not going to go and create the curriculum, but I'm happy to talk about this in a forum, and the colleges, it's their role to actually come in and create curriculum which is more connected. So every college, goes for placement. So you can't say that they are not connected. And based on that, through inviting people for dialogue, and there's enough literature which is written, they don't even need to ask someone specific. They just need to make those changes happen. So I don't think B schools and colleges really change their curriculum, as quickly as the world changes, which is why progressively they fall further and further behind. And that's where the students who are there are actually at a disadvantage, I think. So I would really urge the colleges to really create systems where you create, stuff more on the fly. So even if it is not perfect, actually getting people to create the course and getting them to learn and try and improvise, well, that's really the model of learning. So think about, again, that Swift example. Which college, I'd really like to see that, to me, the college which is really, really good in, let's say, programming language, should have by now created a course outline and taught the students how to program in Swift. And I'm not sure I've heard of one. So that's really the gap between what's happening in the real world versus what's happening in the B schools.
I'm tempted to say that next question is perhaps my favorite, Abhijit. It's from Sachin Yadav from Dinergy Consulting. With the advent of MOOC, massive open online courses, what do you foresee the evolution of the L&D function as?
Great. I think it's really like saying, how did e-learning change, the L&D function? They'll make L&D people redundant and all that. No, I mean, it isn't. By that logic, most of what is taught in schools today is available for free on the internet. I mean, most of what colleges are teaching is available for free in a MOOC. So, what MOOCs have done is a couple of different things. One is, I think MOOCs are making education a lot more inclusive. If you see, I mean, I think just this morning or yesterday, I posted some data on, who is really using MOOCs. A lot of the MOOC users are actually people in whose country or area or continent, quality education is not available. So they are actually able to leverage that. The second thing that is happening, and I was talking to, a person who's actually one of the pioneers in creating MOOCs, someone who created Coursera. And that conversation was that, there are people in places in very remote areas in countries where, because of either religious persecution or for political instability or for multiple social reasons, certain groups, I mean, whether it's women or children, they don't allow them to go out to study in schools. They're actually going to be able to take advantage of a MOOC and continue their education. So I think that's a fantastic way in which MOOCs are going to be inclusive. So it's going to expand the scope of the world of ideas. So I think that's the terrific part of what's happening in MOOCs. The second aspect of that is it going to take away and replace and all? The answer is no. It's going to supplement. When books turned to e-books, did it mean that people stopped reading books? No, I mean they didn't. It's just that it gave people another option. So it will give people an option. I think what is going to happen though is, and we are progressively, for example, in my team, I recognize people who picked up the skill through MOOCs. I recognize that. Formally, I'm recognizing that. We are in the process of crafting a policy to formally recognize people who've taken MOOCs. Not necessarily even because they've added this particular skill, but more because these are people who are role models because they've taught themselves how to learn on their own, and that's the model of the employee that we are seeking to invest in. So I think, so therefore, to summarize that answer, it is going to be that the role of the employer is going to change, and so is going to be the role of the place where you've learned that stuff from. So people will care less about which institute you got your degree from, and they are going to be more interested in knowing, can you do a particular thing? And therefore, if you've done it, if you learned through a MOOC, when the employer comes in and gives you that job, that's the greatest endorsement of the MOOC. So I think that's where the employer-employee relationship is going to change from a MOOC point of view.
Sure. Abhijit, the next question is with respect to the competencies that L&D professionals should build. So what are some of the tips or some of the must-knows for a L&D manager?
Some of the things which have always been, important, one of which is, for instance, the ability to understand business. And like I specified, I mean, when you say understand business, it means change it. You should be able to answer three questions. How do we make money? How do we sell? And how do we deliver what we sell? So those are the three questions that give you an understanding of the business. So that's how it has always been. So there's nothing new about that. I think what has changed is, the people's ability to understand, for instance, how do you integrate social media? How do you integrate technology? How do you integrate communities? Integrate it into the learning process. So it is not an add-on. It is an integrated part of it. The second thing that I would look at, what L&D professionals need to understand a lot is actually, subjects like anthropology, which give you an idea of uncovering the unmet, unstated needs of people. So that's another piece that I think would be a very important skill for people to understand. The third skill that I would look at is, the ability to understand analytics and create analytics to customize learning to that individual, the last mile to the last individual. So that's the part of it. The ability to create content which is on multiple medium. So that's the fourth piece, which is can I create content for the mobile? Can I create content for the web? Am I comfortable creating content on Twitter? Can I create content on blogs? Can I create content for video? All of that, to be able to do that. And then sort of really to tie all of it together and say, do I understand user experience design so that this entire thing actually makes it very attractive for a person to learn and to try it out. So that's really the model that one is talking about.
Abhijit, we would be on the verge of wrapping it. Few final questions. What are the matrices that demonstrate impact or effectiveness of L&D functions? What are some of measures that best-in-class organizations take?
I think when you are looking at, so let me just sort of take a step back. I think most of the times when you look at, whether the traditional Kirkpatrick model or Phillips model or whatever, you're talking about, a lot of it has been created for the world of training. And I think training is becoming increasingly redundant. It's going to become development and learning, so, and therefore, you sort of really see we don't call it the training department anymore. It's learning and development, because that's the nature of what this business is supposed to be doing. So the measures for learning is really, is much harder, because learning actually is a far more fuzzier process. So for example, when you learn something, you may learn something cognitively, but you still may not be able to implement it. For example, a lot of people, when they have traveled in a flight, they have actually seen a demonstration of how to use the life jacket. But I'm not sure, and I've asked this question to hundreds of people. I'm always curious that, well, you've seen that demonstration many times. How confident are you that you will be able to use that life jacket if tomorrow you have to make an emergency landing? Very, very, very few people. Out of the literally hundreds of people I've asked this question to, only 3 or 4 people have said, yeah, I think I can use it. So would you say that they have learned? Would you say that this learning has been useless? Would you say that this learning is effective? And if they were to actually be able to use it and try it out, that is really where learning really gets sharpened. So the ability to practice, a small chunk. Unlike training, you take people for a 5-day program and you teach them 500 different things. Piece, how do you fix it? And how do you learn that? And so it's a much smaller component. It takes much longer to learn and implement. And it's once you've implemented, you're probably going to make errors in the beginning. And then you're probably going to, correct yourself and then step back and then do it again. So it is that model of experimenting, prototyping, trying it again, making small corrections, seeking feedback. That is, to me, if people are doing that, learning is bound to be a byproduct. Don't measure learning. Learning is a byproduct. But really measure, do you have the kind of environment, the culture, and which is going to facilitate learning? And that, to me, is a far sharper process, which is going to make that happen.
I'm tempted to squeeze some more questions. One more is from Gautam. He asks, what is the role of professional associations to help L&D professionals develop the skills for the future? The role of professional associations.
To me, a profession, by definition, a professional association, therefore, is a collection of professionals. That has 3 or 4 very defined tasks. One is, a professional is a person who is completely skilled in all aspects of that profession, which means if I'm a L&D person, I am conceptually as strong as it could possibly be. So think about a medical doctor. You don't want to go to a medical doctor, who has perhaps no competence in handling a certain set of diseases, knows only 2 or 3 things, and sort of so you want people who are completely competent in the body of knowledge. 2, you have regular certifications and upgradations of skill. So the professional body should be able to, upgrade that doctor or, whichever professional body it is. I'm taking that doctor's example because I think it's closest to what the L&D person does to explain that. And so you should be able to actually say that here are the new things that have happened, here are the new procedures. So you go to a doctor, you will discover that they have continuously, the good ones at least, get themselves certified through seminars, conferences. They are really upgrading their skills. The third thing is that, it should really give you a license to practice for a short span of time. I think in that L&D profession, we should test people for their knowledge and then give them the license to practice it for maybe another year, because things change a lot. And if the person doesn't, move along with that, a learning professional should be tested, actually, in my view, certainly in an annual process by a professional body. The fourth and last element is that, you should measure the person's competence by the kind of contribution the person makes to the body of knowledge, which means if I'm a doctor, am I contributing to the body of knowledge of medicine or, surgery or, physiotherapy, whatever is my particular skill? In the same way, for an L&D professional, am I contributing to the whole body of knowledge in terms of approaches, media, by writing about it, by blogging about it, by holding learning communities, and contributing actively to the growing body of knowledge through practice. So then practice and concept are always integrated in what the person does. So these are the four elements that I think a professional body should be doing. If they are not, then they are merely, events to network and have food. They are not professional bodies.
Abhijit, the next one is from Rashmi. The Twitter handle is @Mandloy Rashmi, and her question is: if building development strategies is by being inclusive in thoughts, needs, and requirements, how does diversity get built into this?
I think, if you start with that whole premise that every business is unique, every learner is unique, every methodology is unique, and no one person actually is equally effective in either teaching all the methodologies or learning from all the methodologies. We sort of look at the very premise of it. To be an effective L&D person, diversity is, inclusion and diversity is integrated in that whole process. If you are not doing that, you are not obviously, then you are coming back to that whole model of the old traditional model of training that I know 25 slides, I know the script, and I'm sort of going to deliver it one way or the other. I don't care whether you learn or it's effective or not. So I think the whole process of customizing it, it's really, in that true sense, it is inclusive and it's diverse. Because no two human beings learn in the same way. To be able to understand that, or to understand within the organization, how is it different if you created something for, let's say, I'm going to use a Wipro example, that it's for the manufacturing segment. If I did that, how different is it than what I would create, let us say, for the healthcare segment? And then within manufacturing, if I did something, how different is what I'm doing for, let's say, the Apple account as compared to a Microsoft account, because both are my customers. How do I do that, on an ongoing basis? And that's really, to me, the inclusion and the diversity that one is talking about, by really trying to understand the exact unique needs and not creating a one-size-fits-all.
Sure. Um, One final question, which is from Brilliant, and his question is: generalization or customization of training. How do we achieve cost effectiveness if we go with individual customization?
I really love this question. I think that is where we'll have to sort of, if you think about it, the assumption behind this question is that the onus of that learning is really only on the L&D team, which means I need to figure out how to customize it. Actually, the role of the L&D team is really to be a curator of resources, which means if somebody wants to learn in a certain way and says, by the way, do you have something which is useful to me? I should be able to say, I'm looking for a blog pertaining to this, which is a good blog to follow. Or, where are the resources I can find to answer how to start agile development and so on and so process. You should be a curator of that information and knowledge. And two, you should be networked enough to be able to source that from the best possible place. If you do that, don't get restricted by what is existing within the organization, because chances are that an organization, no matter how big it is, and Wipro is a large organization, 150,000 people, but no matter how big we are, chances are that there are 7 billion people outside of this 150,000, somebody who's done it before, somebody who's done it better, somebody who's got an answer which is far more precise than what you know. So I think the ability to connect those resources is probably the way the person can be far more effective. So I would actually look at the role of L&D not to to take on the onus of customizing from the point of view of cost, but to be able to really look at it from the point of view of leveraging the resources that the world has to offer. And many of the resources today, fortunately for us, we are living in a great time when the best of the resources are the ones which are free. So really, I think it's a great time for the L&D professionals. If you are networked, if you are a curator, if you are a curious person, you know what is happening somewhere, you are far better positioned to help out people than what you were maybe even 3 years back. Thank you.
Thanks, Abhijit. I think we had a power packed session with, you know, topics from how can L&D be part of a CEO's agenda, how can we drive the L&D strategy, understanding the business drivers, touching upon social media, MOOC, working on diversity and various aspects. Um, so again, thanks a lot for taking time and giving us your input. I would transfer the control back to Savita. Savita?
Thank you, Shivin. Thank you very much, Abhijit. Of course, thank you very much, listeners, for being a part of this exciting session of the L&D Leadership League Twangout. We are now coming to the end of this session, and I have a winner for the most active listener, and his Twitter handle is at Kunjal23. His name is Kunjal Kamdar. Congratulations, Kunjal, and thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and your questions. So you are our winner for the 1-year print and the digital subscription of People Matters today. That will reach you very, very soon. Congratulations, Kunjal, once again. With this, we come to an end to this super exciting, action-packed Twangout today. We thank you very much, Abhijit, for being a fantastic speaker and making this Twangout super insightful with all the analogies and examples that you shared with your experience as well. A very big thank you, Abhijit.
Thank you very much, Savita. Thank you very much, Shivan, for asking some terrific questions. And to the listeners, actually, I'm sorry, I would have, since some of the questions which are there on Twitter, which I've not been able to respond to, I will do that on Twitter in a couple of minutes. But thank you very much for giving me an opportunity and having me here. Appreciate it greatly. Thanks.
It's totally our pleasure, Abhijit. Thank you very much, Shivin, for being a great co-host. Thank you once again for being an exciting and terrific audience today. We are sure to see you again next month with another L&D Leadership League Twangout. Till then, we look forward to welcoming you again. And as we close today's session, wish you a very, very great evening ahead and a great week ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everyone. We'll stay in touch on Twitter. Thanks.